Welcome to Money, Manifestation, and Business, the podcast that shows you how to use your energy, intention, and consciousness to reprogram your money mindset, unleash a new level of possibility, and create a life and business that lights you up. I'm your host, Jamie Berman, and I invite you to join me each week for a dose of inspiration, coaching, and teachings to help you rewrite your money story, create abundance on your terms, and grow your business in a way that's fully aligned for you. This is going to be so much fun. Let's dive in. I have a treat for you today. I have my personal one-on-one coach that I love deeply. I'm so excited to have her on the podcast today because she happens to be not only a one-on-one life coach for leaders and high achievers, but she's also an amazing relationship expert. And so I wanted to have her on because I know there's so many questions that I get for those of you listening and those of you in my community around how do we navigate money in partnership? How do we navigate manifestation in partnership? So I am bringing you the best today, Maggie Reyes, and she is going to answer your questions and we're going to dive into this topic. So welcome, Maggie. So happy to have you.
Thank you for having me. I am so excited to be here. It's an honor to be on the podcast. It's an honor to be your coach. So thank you for all of it.
I have to tell you something really synchronistic that I didn't even notice until today. It is my 9-year wedding anniversary. And how synchronistic that we are talking about marriage and partnership and manifestation because such a significant day to talk about that.
That's
so I was
amazing.
That's divine.
Happy anniversary. It's like you're manifesting even just more growth, more connection, more love. It's like,
totally.
I don't know. It's kind of like automatic pilot manifesting a little bit. When you get into the flow, when you get into the vortex, you're just like, my general intention is for goodness and connection. And then
100%. Yes. My thought actually about my relationship and every anniversary that we hit is that it just keeps getting better and better each year. And our love keeps growing stronger and deeper every single year. And it is 100% manifested every year that's been the case. And we were talking about it today and it's just like, wow, 9 years ago, the place that we were in is so different. Our life was amazing, but wow, is it just like even better 9 years later? So anyways, so fun because we practiced all this work together and I'm excited to talk with you about it because I think listeners are wondering, how do you navigate that, right?
Yeah.
Where maybe you're not on the same page and stuff like that. So let's dive in. I think the first thing we really want to talk about is that soul-centered communication and how do we have those money conversations? Because I know that's a challenge for so many people, especially when you come from different backgrounds, when you have different triggers around money, when you have different views and perspectives coming together and merging that and asking how do we create a financial reality together when there's differences can be interesting to navigate. It can be a big opportunity for growth. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how you work with people around that and what perspectives you have on it.
I love this question. So because I coach people, so like you said, I coach leaders who often have teams and communities and people that they're in relationship with.
Here.
Right? Just raising your hand if you can't see it. And then I coach on marriage, which is also obviously like our most intimate relationship. And then how do we work through it? And in any of those scenarios, communication becomes a cornerstone of how we get things done. And I like to remind people that our entire life happens inside of a conversation.
Yeah.
Our entire life. Even a legal contract that you sign is just a written conversation. I'm agreeing to this. You're agreeing to that. Here's what we're doing. So when you take the perspective that everything in your life happens inside of a conversation, then getting really good at conversations.
Wow.
Is a really good idea.
Right there, just mic drop. This is why I love Maggie, you guys. Like everything she says, I honestly, and it's so funny because I wasn't looking for like someone who
Yeah.
specialized in relationships. That wasn't the
Yeah.
area of my life that I felt like I wanted to get most of my coaching on. But every time I saw Maggie coach, I'd be like, mic drop. Oh my gosh, you can apply this to so many areas. Never ever thought about that. And it's so true because whether that's relationship with yourself and conversation with yourself or in life. So
Yeah. Yeah. So even in money manifesting, right? It's what is our conversation about money, to money, with money? What is our conversation about manifestation or creation or where our powerfulness lies?
Yeah.
Like we're in relationship with these things and we're in conversation with these things. So based on that, I developed a framework called soul-centered communication, which is what I teach now. And we're going to talk about it in relation to money. And the thing that soul-centered communication allows us to do, the tool that is the purpose of the tool is to allow us to have what I call connected conversations.
Okay.
And connected conversations have three elements. You're connected to yourself, to your inner power, to your resourcefulness, to your magnificence. Think about those times when we know we've been disconnected from ourselves, right? Where we're not there for ourselves. So in a connected conversation, you're connected to yourself. You're connected to your positive regard for the other person.
Yeah.
So whether it's your boss, your partner, your cousin, your friend, you're connected to them in your positive regard about them. You're not connected to they're so annoying and this is a problem. You're connected to the highest and best part of them. And you're connected to the purpose of the conversation. You're connected to why we're here today, right?
Yeah.
So any problem we have in life, if we look back, there's some disconnection.
Okay.
In our conversations. Yeah. Right. And even if you think about money manifesting, which I know is like our favorite topic, that's why we listen to this podcast. It's like, oh, where am I disconnected from how I think about money, my relationship with money? Yeah. Where am I disconnected from like my power to manifest or to create? Yeah. And then what my whole life is like, where do we look for the connection? How do we cultivate the connection? Where is it already present? How can we harness that instead of making a new one? Right? Can we just use the one we already have? So soul-centered communication, I'm going to briefly tell you the steps and I'll tell you my tip for like how to think about it through the lens of money and money conversations with our partner, people that we love. So there's 4 steps. It's to be solution-focused, open-hearted, open-minded, open to new ideas. Solution-focused is just to keep your eye on what you want, not on the problem.
Sounds interesting. Sounds like manifestation. I love it. 100%.
I always think that truth with a capital T is going to be the same. And we just use different words and we describe it differently, but it's always going to lead us to the same place. So solution focused, what do I want in this conversation? What is the goal here? Open-hearted, am I willing to consider somebody else's point of view? If I'm not, we have strategies for that. Yep. Uncomplicated. Okay. Uncomplicated means one thing only, and then the next thing. Another thing that blocks our manifestations is we get really complicated with what they have to look like and how they have to be, and with know all of these details that then don't allow the universe to come in and fill in the details in the way that's best for us. Right. So here's like just a direct line. It's like, how can I make the thing that I'm wanting to manifest or work on uncomplicated? Yeah. And then loving, so soul, S-O-U-L, solution-focused, open-hearted, uncomplicated, and loving. Loving is, am I loving and respecting myself equally as the other person? Yeah. So tell me, Jamie, if this has happened to you. Many, many, many of my clients prioritize everyone and everything else. Yeah. Leave themselves either for last or not even on the list. Totally. So you're having a conversation with someone about, can you bake 54 bagels for the family, picnic? Sure, I can, right? But if I included myself, I'd be like, oh, I'm in the middle of a launch and I have clients coming live to my house. And 54 bagels right now is not really the best idea.
100%. 100%. Right? Yes.
So the loving part is, am I including myself? Am I loving myself as I listen, as I agree or disagree, as I ask questions? It's just the most basic version is, am I including myself? So that's the soul part. Yep. Then the centered part is a soul-centered communication, soul-centered connected conversation does not happen inside of a stress cycle. So So a stress cycle is fight, flight, freeze, appease. We're activated in some way. We don't have access to our best resourcefulness, to our best creativity, to our best all the things that we want.
So if you're triggered around this topic or around money, or if you're coming at it already triggered, that's probably what we want to address first then, right?
Yeah. It's like, so then with social communication, if we don't want to have them inside stress cycles, and the question is, how do we not be in a stress cycle, right? Like
100%. Right? Yep.
And then the answer is we learn the term psychological safety. Hello, everyone. Welcome to your former HR, now life coach friend. So I used to work in HR, and in HR, we talk about this term called psychological safety. And Google did some amazing research with all their teams, or a ginormous company, and they found, to the surprise of no one, that the safer you feel, the more creative you are. And the more that their managers and leaders could cultivate this idea of psychological safety, the more productive they were, the more money they made, the more projects they completed. Like, everything got better when you did that. And so my little HR nerd self read about this. I'm like, well, what about in a marriage? What about in a relationship? I bet you if we had more psychological safety, everything would go better, right? And so that's what we want to cultivate when we're having conversations around money, when we have different mindsets about manifestation, when somebody maybe loves manifestation and someone else just doesn't have the same set of thoughts about it.
Okay.
How do we make it safe to talk about?
Ooh, yeah. Could you offer any guidance on that? Because I think that is probably the key for so many people, is to start there. Because once we're activated, the whole slowing down, understanding their perspective, adding our perspective in, it's so much harder. Like you said, it's impossible to go to that soul place. So let's just say we're having a conversation with a partner around budgeting, and they have two different perspectives, and you start getting triggered, right? Whatever way that is, fight, flight, freeze, whatever it is for you, you just notice that you're shutting down. Do you have any advice for the person that's in that place and thinks that people could start practicing when communicating around money?
I have so much advice. This podcast could take 10 hours. So I'm just going to give you like one.
100%. Yep. Where do we begin?
Okay. So the first thing is to recognize it's happening. So we want to, most of us walk around the world having these reactions, but they're unconscious and we don't even know we're having them. For ourselves, we don't know we're having them.
For sure.
And then we're talking to someone and they're visibly upset or retreat. So step one is to have what I call stress cycle awareness, which is just A, we have stress cycles. And B, I can see it in the other person. So if you're talking to someone and they raise their voice, or they use aggressive language, we can recognize what fight looks like, right? If you're talking to someone and they keep going in circles and you feel like the conversation is not making any progress, that's what freeze looks like in a conversation. And we've all had that experience. So everybody listening, think about that for a sec. You've all experienced that. But we didn't have the labeling to call it freeze. And just having the awareness, that's telling you that that other person is in a stress cycle and they're not thinking clearly and they're not going to make their best decisions. And then we can decide, should we keep talking? Should we step away? Should we reschedule? So just having the awareness to label what's happening then gives you choices on what you want to do next. So that's so important. So freeze. So we did fight. Flight is when you change the topic, when you pick up your phone, when you look somewhere else. If you're in
pick up Instagram,
pick up Instagram. We've all done it. We've all done it. We're in a social situation and somebody starts looking for other people. They're flying away from the conversation is what they're doing. And it's just good to know that that means something stressed them out. It may not have been anything you said. They may have something on their mind, something else is going on. And then appease is when you say yes to things you'd rather say no to. And for the person you're talking to, notice if they agree too quickly. If they agree and you can tell they haven't thought it through, they haven't taken it through their own discernment, they're just like, sure, I'll do that. That person is in a stress response. And to give you an example of how this presents in intimate relationships, very often, so I coach women usually in relationships with men, and they'll ask their husband to do something. So let's all just pretend that our faucet is broken and we're asking our partner, hey, could you fix the faucet?
Yep.
And he has no interest in fixing this faucet, and this is the last thing he's ever going to do.
Yep.
And you come to him and you say, hey, would you fix the faucet? He's like, yeah, totally. I'll take care of it tomorrow. You can tell they haven't thought about it. They haven't considered their schedule. They haven't looked at what they have going on tomorrow. Nothing has happened. They are just saying yes because they feel emotional danger of some kind.
Yeah,
They're having
right.
an activation.
Yep.
Here's the liberatory part of that. When you can see that they're not lying to you or discounting you or not caring about you, when you can see that they're actually just having a stress response,
Yeah.
it opens up a whole new level of connection with that person.
Yes.
Because something I've coached on a lot is like, he says yes, but then he never follows through.
Right. Totally.
We all have that friend. Sometimes
Totally.
right?
Yep.
Oh, they've never followed through. So what I want you to know about that person is that person, in the moment that they're saying yes, they believe themselves.
Yep. Okay.
They're not actually lying to you. They think they're going to fix the faucet.
And they want to, right? They want to.
They want to, maybe. They want to, right?
Yep.
But they are not lying to you. They are maybe lying to themselves, but it's unconscious.
Yeah, totally.
And then when you can notice that, you can slow down the conversation. You can make new choices. You can check in with them.
Yeah.
It just gives you more power and more choice when you can recognize stress cycles. So the first step to minimizing, or not minimizing because we're all going to have them, but to minimizing the impact that they have on us.
Yes. And working with them, right?
And working with them and flowing with them is just to recognize them in the first place.
Yeah.
That's step one. And then cultivating psychological safety. There's a bunch of different things that you can do. I'll tell you like my top 2 or 3. One, which I know you will relate to because we're both cognitive based coaches. Like the words that we use matter, right?
Yeah.
And the words that we use create and inspire feelings and results. So think about how you describe things as a contributor to psychological safety. So let's pretend that you're my boss.
Yep.
And you come back from vacation and something happened. And you walk in and I tell you, there was a catastrophe.
Yeah.
Right? And that's how I start the story. Right. And for the rest of the story, you're just freaking out.
Already activated, right?
Already activated. But imagine the same scenario. You walk in from vacation and I'm like, here's my report, my update. And I say, well, we had a little situation with a client and here's how I handled it. And here's what's next. And here's what we're going to do. And here's what's pending. It's the same scenario. The only difference is I described it as a situation versus a catastrophe.
Oh, that's huge.
Huge.
Yes.
Huge. And through the lens of just manifestation itself, it's like, how are we describing the things we want to create? Are they big and far away, or are they small and closer to us?
Yeah. Could you give an example, if you have one, of how that might be implemented around money? What would be some ways of approaching it where maybe it would offer an invitation where it's more inviting a conversation of curiosity, or where we aren't just automatically saying something that's gonna, I don't want to say cause a trigger, but it's going to heighten someone's reaction. Are there simple offerings that you have?
I'm going to tell you one thing I did last night. I literally did this last night with my husband talking about money. Is I love continuing education. I like to invest in a lot of things. And sometimes I invest in of things. And sometimes I invest in things that aren't really expensive at all relative to our budget. Totally. And I'm doing a training that I'm really excited about. And instead of telling him that I'm doing the training, and then he could sit and wonder for the next 5 minutes, how much money is this training, and freak himself out. I was like, I'm doing this very cheap training. It's super affordable. This is what it costs. Let me tell you all about it next. Right? So I literally did that last night. And he was like, this sounds wonderful. You should totally do that training. Right?
Totally.
Now, what I did was transparency. Like the skill or the thing I want everybody to learn and to take away is not the specific words that I used, but is how could you be transparent about the thing at hand? So I'm going to give you another example of using transparency to talk about money with a partner. And it's one of my favorite, I don't know, coaching wins. You know, we sort of like coaches have our coaches sort of greatest hits, like
100%.
things our clients have done that like blow our mind all the time.
Yeah.
So this is one of my favorites. So one of my clients wanted to talk to her husband about money, and they always had different values, different value systems around money. So pause here to say, find out your partner's values around money. What are they? Do they think money is security and they want to save as much of it as they can, and the more they save, the more secure they feel?
Yeah.
Do they think money is just a conduit for adventure, and the more money they spend, the more adventures they have? Like, when you find out their values, then you can frame whatever you're talking about with your values and their values in mind. So that's just another way to do it, is to think about each other's values, and that creates more psychological safety. But anyway, so back to transparency. So she wanted to invest in something. She wanted to talk to her husband about it. And every time in the past that they had talked about sort of big money investments or expenses, it was a fight. It would last for weeks. It was a whole drama. So in coaching, what we did was this. We said, here's my hypothesis. The more psychological safety you create, the better it will be for you. So here's my suggestion. Tell him you want to talk about this thing. When is a good time?
Yeah.
So transparency, the thing.
Yep.
And consent. When is a good time? Consent is always a good idea. All the time, even in our manifestations, or when we want something for somebody else, we always say for their highest good, whatever's for their best. You know, we don't know what's for their best. So like, we don't have their direct consent. So we just send some highest good to them.
100%. Right? Yeah, right? Totally. Okay.
So consent and then transparency. So she did that. She said, I'd like to talk about this. When is a good time? And he gave her a date, and they put it on the calendar. And in the past, what used to happen is he'd walk through the door, maybe after a long day of work, she'd be like, here's this thing. I want to spend all these thousands of dollars. And he'd be like, absolutely not. This is terrible. We're going to, live under a bridge. And then they'd fight about it for a week.
Yeah.
So instead of doing that, she said, when it's a good time. In that time, she told him what it was in the amount. And this man, made a spreadsheet. So when it came to their time to speak, he said, I've looked at our situation, and if you want to do that thing, we can move this around, cancel this, do this other thing next year, and you can have that in 2 weeks, this money that you want to do the thing.
Yeah.
They talked for 5 minutes. She got what she needed, and she was done. And they moved on. There was no fight. There was nothing. There was nothing. That was it. That's the power of consent and transparency. And then someone having psychological safety to think on their own how they want to approach it. So he wanted to make sure that they moved some things around to accommodate for this thing. He thinks a little slower. She thinks a little faster, right? Some of our friends or loved ones, we need more time to process. And less time to process.
Is that normal in couples? I don't know. That's me. Yes. I'm the fast one. We always say, I am definitely the rabbit. He is.
Yes. Yeah. So that example. So for you directly, Jamie, when you want to talk to him about something, you say, I want to talk to you about this thing. When is a good time? And if there's anything he needs to consider, you can ask him, would you like to know what I'm going to ask you to consider so you can think about it a little bit before we talk?
Fantastic.
And you give him the opportunity to say yes or no.
Yep.
And then you talk to him on that day. And then it could be useful, maybe, not to expect an answer on that day. Now that we've talked about it, I'd love for you to think about it. And then when you've thought it through, I'd love to talk about it again.
Yep.
Creating that space to say, I know that I like to move fast and you like to be a little bit more analytical in how you do things, right?
Yep.
And honoring that in him also creates psychological safety.
Yes, that's huge. And like, as you say that, I think that's probably one of the biggest things, and one of the biggest opportunities for growth is in what I'm hearing is just really understanding our partner's way of doing things too, and our partner's way of being, and not making that wrong.
Correct.
Because I mean, it's so easy to say, well, this is the way, this is how I do it, this is how I want it done. But what if we consider their way isn't wrong? It's just different, right?
Yes.
Whether that's, like from what I'm hearing too, is just understanding their nervous system response, understanding our nervous system response, so that we can understand if and when we're triggered, or if or when they're triggered, and we can slow the conversation down.
Yeah.
And that creates so much awareness. And I think that idea, if there's one thought that I'm even taking away that I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to bring this into every conversation moving forward, is that there's no one way to do it, right? There's no right way. My way is one way, their way is one way. How can we come together? So what I'm curious about is, how is it possible to come together? How do you meet in the middle when you have two completely different opinions or ways of doing this? Let's say one person tends to be an avoider of money. Another person tends to be quite rigid and on top of it and anxious and wanting to look at every single thing, and it creates some conflict. How would you recommend, even though let's say we have awareness that we're different, how would you recommend coming together so that you can still thrive in a relationship when there's two different ways of being, two different values, two different triggers?
So there's a couple of things that I would recommend. So the first one is, where do you overlap? Where do you agree? Where do your values align? How much can you focus on that?
Yep.
And where do you need to make your own choices as individuals?
Okay.
So when it comes to money, for example, if the values are completely diametrically opposed, you might have separate bank accounts and a united bank account. So you might have 3 bank accounts.
Okay.
And if your values are completely aligned, you might have 1 bank account, right?
Yeah.
Like, so it could be, oh, we're never going to agree on how much to invest, but we can agree on how much to put in for the mortgage. And then the other part is going to do that. And you don't have to have an opinion about it. I'm just going to do it. And I don't have to have an opinion about whatever, how many comic books you buy or something. And you can just go and do that, whatever the thing may be. So one of those things is to look for where you overlap and can unite. And to look for where you need to, let's use a fancy word, individuate. And make some of those choices. Now that will have difficult conversations involved because you might even disagree on that. Someone might think we should do everything together, and someone might think, well, I don't want to do everything together. And that's where you use these skills of creating as much psychological safety as possible to have that difficult conversation, and then remembering that you're on the same team. Say, okay, if we were on the same team, how would we solve this? How would we approach this?
That's so
and
good.
If you're in a relationship with someone who cares about you, even if they have different values, they will listen with empathy to your values. And if they don't, that's a red flag.
Okay.
Right? Like, we want to acknowledge that. If that feels like a completely impossible conversation, that's a yellow to orange to red, depending on the severity, but that's a flag. We gotta look at that more deeply. The other thing, so I said there were 2 things. So the other thing,
no, it's so good. Thank you.
Think about this, like what you were saying about how to manage money, but also just the idea, like, early birds marry night owls, and people who like to plan marry the spontaneous person.
Totally.
Right? And the slow thinker marries the fast thinker, like all of that, right? So there's amazing research from an institute called the Gottman Institute, and what they have found is that 67% of problems, I hope I'm saying it correctly, are unsolvable. So there's a difference. And when I read this, it blew my mind when I read it, and now I teach about it and talk about it all the time because it blew my mind. There's a difference between a problem you solve and a problem you manage. So a problem you solve has a clear end date. We paid off the mortgage on the 25th payment. We're done. It's complete. It ended, right? That's something it's solvable. It has a
clear solution, right?
And you're done. There's a done point. Now, I'll use myself as an example. I tend to be late. My husband tends to be on time. Over the years, I didn't even know. I have some neurodivergence in me. I have some time blindness. It's hard for me to calculate time sometimes. But so that is not solvable. That will never go away for as long as I live. What do we do with that? We need to manage that. And what I see most people do when they have those problems where they're fighting all the time and they're not happy and they're frustrated is they're trying to solve something that is inherently unsolvable.
Oh my gosh. I love it.
That's so good. I could drop right now.
I'm just letting that soak in. It's so good. So it's about managing.
Yes. So it's about managing, mitigating, preparing for whatever the case may be. So if I'm all in on manifestation and I know it freaks my partner out and I want to manifest some really big thing, I look for how can I create safety around it. So if I want to manifest my dream house, I'll be like, listen, I'm not going to do anything crazy. I'm going to talk to you every step of the way. I'm going to keep you updated on how my manifestations are going.
Yep.
Here's what I'm doing. I'm not going to like risk the family fortune. I'm not going to sell my car, you know. So you're telling the person, okay, there's some safety here. I'm still going for my big dream.
Yep.
And here's how I'm approaching it and what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But it's really important to me to go for my dream because that's what lights me up. That's what gives my life meaning, right? One of the things that really helps a lot is when we can be vulnerable with the people in our lives. And instead of from a place of like, I got this, but from a place of like, this is why this matters so much to me.
Yeah.
Then it becomes so much easier for them to access compassion and to sort of be back on your side about it.
Yes.
And anything you share about lowering the risk or how you're mitigating your own risk, that helps them.
Yeah. Wow. So what I'm hearing too, it's not fighting for what you want. It's not trying to prove it. It's not trying to defend it. It's coming together as if you're a team and helping them gain perspective around why it's important to you from a non-triggered place when you are not in your nervous system, you know, your triggered response and communicating. That's huge. I love that.
Yeah.
So I had some really great questions that came in from my community, and I would love to ask you, Maggie. So maybe you could offer some support. So someone asked if there are some struggles in the relationship, even when we're actively working on them, how might those struggles interfere, if at all, with manifesting money or work? What are some ways to stay focused on the manifestation in one area while struggling in relationship?
Okay, so I want to hear your thoughts about this too, but my first answer to this is if you let it mess with your vibe.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. If you let it rain on your parade. So we're on our parade doing our thing. In our parade, there's only umbrellas and like magic glitter dust rain. That's it. Yeah. This other thing that's going on over here, if we let it make our parade cloudy, that's how it can interfere with a manifestation. So some of the things that you do is you create a boundary. Maybe you don't talk to this person about that thing if that's one of the triggers in the relationship. Maybe depending on which relationship it is, if it's someone that you don't live with, maybe you talk to them less, maybe you call them less, maybe you lower the time you are spending with that person. Right. So there's some element of, if you don't want it to mess with the manifestation or something you're working on, is how is it affecting my vibe, if at all? And then if it is affecting my vibe, what are the boundaries I need to set with this person so I can still do this thing? So that's one. And then with the struggle in the relationship, what I would say is, how can you relate to the highest and best part of them? And this is tricky. So I'm going to add the nuance, right? There's some relationships that need to end, and you need to be really honest with yourself about that. And sometimes that's hard, which is why people work with coaches and all that stuff. But from my HR days, I had all kinds of internal clients, right, that I had to work with that I couldn't choose, right? I just got what I got. And some people were really good to work with, and some people were great to work with. And my way of staying in my vibe around that was I would look at the person, and then someone would be like a jerk. They certified, they're a jerk. People don't like them. They'd come up to me, they'd warn me about them in a meeting, whatever. And I'd be like, what is it in this person that I can connect with that's their highest vibe they have available? Oh, they really care about their team. They care about everybody else, but they care about their team. Oh, they really care about excellence. They're mean to their team, but it's because they want the product to be amazing. Whatever it is that I could hang on to that was the highest vibe part of them, that helps.
I love that. I love that. So good. Another thing that's just interesting to think about as I was thinking about this question is I feel like as humans, we always have an area of our life that we're expanding around, growing into, maybe have an obstacle that we're working through because we're living in the human experience. And there's the obstacles create the growth and they create the expansion. So for most humans, there's some area of our life that we're experiencing some kind of growth edge or some kind of obstacle. And then there's other areas of our life that are smooth sailing, or sometimes we're even experiencing wins and celebrations and amazing things. So I think even if you just let go of the idea that every area of my life has to be going amazing and positive in order to manifest money or to manifest, business growth. That's just a thought that I would question.
100%.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like the idea that you have to have perfect conditions in order to manifest is the problem.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
So we're gonna have this human experience the whole time, and in the middle of all this stuff, we're gonna also manifest.
100%. I mean, how many people struggle in their marriages and are still thriving at work, right?
Yeah.
Like you could separate the two. That could be helpful too. Of like, this is my growth edge, and this is what I'm focusing on over here. But work, that gets to be a separate lane. So. Yeah, that might be helpful too to add on in addition. But I love what you shared. And I love what you shared about the relationship too. Okay, I have a couple more questions. Okay, my question would be how to navigate when one partner likes to plan and talk through options while another partner arrives at the same decision more quickly and ideally talk about it once. Unless information has changed, right? So I think it just kind of goes back to what we were talking about previously of like when two people have two different approaches. Is there anything else that you'd want to add on to that?
Yes. Acceptance.
Okay.
So if you're the person who likes to think it through, you married a quick thinker. Can you accept that about them?
Yep.
And what would it look like if you just accepted that? If you're the person who likes to talk about it once, you married someone who needs to talk about it 6 times.
Yeah.
What if that's just, I like to think about it like a relationship tax. Like the tax you pay for being with this amazing person is you got to listen to it 6 times.
Yes.
It's not a problem.
Yep. That's so good. So good.
Yeah.
That's it. You know what? Because I'm in a relationship with someone who's very different. He's a much slower thinker, likes to process things through, likes to take his time. I'm more like, I got the gut instinct. Let's go do the thing. Right. So like some things I would had to wait. Like, I didn't have to, I chose to wait years to create safety for him. Right.
Yes.
And so what I look at it as, what is this here to teach me is patience. Like this is my greatest lesson in patience because it's something I wouldn't learn if I were just on my own and making gut instincts and moving fast and all of that kind of stuff. So I'll add that on too.
Love it.
Yeah, so good. All right. Another question is we have all accounts joined and I'm using everything we learn in the movement, but he's not into manifestation. And sometimes I wonder with it being joined, if it's both of our relationship with money impacting our accounts. Any advice for that?
So this is my completely biased advice as a woman in the United States in 2025.
Yeah.
Have a separate account.
Yeah.
Regardless of anything.
Yeah.
Even if you start at 0 and you put, $100 in that account, there's nothing wrong with having a separate account and letting that be your play money, your manifestation money. You're like, only my energy goes into this bucket, right? Whatever. And I'm saying it for many, many reasons. People forget that it wasn't until the 70s that women could have their own bank account.
Totally.
And as a protective, I don't know if the energy is protective, but as someone who's living in their full sovereignty, if you made all your manifestation dreams come true and became a multimillionaire, you know what would happen is you'd have more than one account.
Yeah.
So let's step into having more than one account now.
Yeah. I love it. So good. Sometimes that can solve a lot. There. Yeah. So good. Amazing. Oh, so good. Okay. One more question is, I'm now convinced that trusting the universe, letting go, and taking courageous actions are enough. But my partner thinks hustle and worry are necessary. So he smiles at me when I tell him how I'm doing this. When he does that, it reinforces the idea that hustle is the way, which I'm trying to stop believing. Then my brain goes to, maybe he's right. Any advice for that?
I have so much advice for that. Okay. It doesn't reinforce the idea that hustle is the way. Mm-hmm. That is a thought. When he does that, I have the thought that he's reinforcing that hustle is the way I create things. But I know magic and manifestation and trusting and all of these other things is the way I create things. So all it does is it tells me his opinion about creating things.
Yeah.
So separating out that it's like, oh, he has a different filter that he views the world with. He's walking around the world with his past experiences, his traumas and wounds, his dreams and goals, and they're different than mine, and he processes the world differently.
Yeah.
When anytime he smiles, that's all it means. So the new thing you're going to think when he smiles is, oh, he processes the world differently. How lovely for him.
Yeah.
The end.
I love it. I love it.
Now, in practice, you're going to have to think that 1,000 times, or you're going to have to practice thinking that 1,000 times. When his doubt makes you doubt, that means you were doubting.
Yeah.
Which is great. It's not a problem. But it just reveals to you where you're still wobbly, because it's like, I think Jamie is a genius. And if somebody came over and told me that she wasn't a genius, I'd just be like, you must be mistaken, because I know her and I know she's a genius. So if he's like, oh, that's fine, you create with manifestation, and you're like, I know that that's real.
Yeah.
You must be mistaken, but we're not going to argue about it because he can have his own opinion. He's entitled.
Totally. Yep.
Right? But it's like, you must be mistaken. It's not going to shake my thought about it at all.
Yeah.
You see?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I love that. And I think while I have you, I want to ask one more question that I hear so often from my community, which is, especially when someone starts diving into this work and starts growing rapidly and they start manifesting and they start believing in this, but their partner's not on board with that. And they're afraid their partner's going to take them down, or their partner's relationship with money or thoughts about things is because their life is together. They're afraid that's going to bring them down, and that even their partner's vibe brings them down. Any thoughts on that? Any perspectives when one person believes in manifestation and is doing their work to think intentionally and putting more positive things out into the world, and then another one isn't really on board with that?
I think you could still love that person if you had other values that were very highly aligned.
Yeah.
So there's nuance to this question. It's like, when you're worried they're going to bring you down, if you genuinely have this worry, that usually isn't the only place you're disagreeing. So for everybody listening, you know yourselves, is this the only place where you're disagreeing, where your values don't align? Or are there like 6 other places where your values don't align? And this is just the loudest one. So the coaching and the guidance would be different depending on it. But let's pretend this is the perfect partner for you. You're totally into them. They're totally into you. This is just this one place where we just don't really see eye to eye. Okay, so if that's the case, in that scenario, what I would say is you can have conversational boundaries.
Yeah.
You don't have to talk about your manifestations. That's what your community is for. That's literally, you're in Jamie's community so that you have a whole group of people all rowing in the same direction, like working on the same things, and you can talk to them and they get it and you don't even have to explain it.
Yeah.
So you can have conversational boundaries with that person, and you can, again, go back to they filter life differently, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's not a problem. So they can have a different experience, and that's not a problem. If you're worried that they're somehow going to bring you down, then if that person was sitting here with us right now for coaching homework, I would tell them, right, all the ways that they're going to bring you down. What do you mean by this? You're going to lose all your money. You're going to live under a bridge. What's going to happen? It's going to kill the vibe, whatever it is, right? All those ways. And then, first of all, when you see it in writing, you're going to be like, well, that's not real because I have control over this one and this one and this one and this one. And it'll start just dissipating on its own.
Yeah.
So kind of like, there's the nuance of, is this the only thing you disagree on for real?
Yeah.
And if it's a bunch of things, then we have to dig a little deeper, right? Yeah. That would be a whole other podcast episode we're going to do today.
Totally.
But
that's a session with Maggie.
that's like call me. Right? Yeah. It's like, but if it's really like they just don't get this one thing, then like my husband is a gamer and is passionate about gaming and loves gaming and it's one of his biggest hobbies and passions in life. And like, I love personal development. Like I could listen to Oprah for 8 hours and these are big, important things in our lives, but he's not going to do that. Like he came with me. He was so sweet. He came with me to what Oprah live event years ago and pulled out his phone and just started reading his phone, but he was there with me.
Right.
He made that effort and he gets all the points for doing that, right?
Yep.
So we are in that situation where there's some things I'm much more invested in that he is.
Yeah.
But I don't experience that as a problem at all. I just because all of our other values align so well that's just a minor thing. So for everybody who has that issue of like, oh, manifestation is so important to me, is this a problem? If it's just part of who you are, you don't have to make it the centerpiece of the thing that tears you apart.
Yeah.
That's optional. You could just say, I value this thing. It's really important to me. And where do we overlap? Where do we agree? What can we share? Coming back.
So good. This was an amazing conversation, Maggie. And I know that listeners are going to be interested in following you, learning about you, listening to your podcast, because I know there's a lot of listeners that want to learn how to integrate these things into their marriage and create thriving, stronger marriages. And I want to add, side note, what's really awesome about you, Maggie, is that you get the stuff that my listeners are here for. Like, one of the reasons that I wanted to work with you is your energy. Like, and on top of it, we love all the same teachers. We've read all the same books. You're super into law of attraction, manifestation, and you know how to bring that into relationships and coaching too. So if somebody wants support either around their relationships or their team, any kind of relationship in their life, where can they come follow you, find you, work with you, all the things?
I love it. Okay, so my website is my name, MaggieReyes.com. You can always go there, see what I'm up to, whatever my coaching offerings are. I do private coaching with leaders and executives and business owners, and then I do marriage coaching. So those are my sort of two specialties. Before I was a coach, I worked in HR, which is why I have a lot of like work references.
Which is always helpful too.
It helps. And then you can follow me on Instagram at the Maggie Reyes. I always joke around that Reyes is like Smith for like Latin people. So there's like a million Maggie Reyeses, but I'm the Maggie Reyes.
Maggie Reyes. Go follow her.
And then I have a podcast called the Marriage Life Coach Podcast, where I really do focus on all of these things through the lens of long-term relationships. So if that's something that calls to you, you can listen to it. And something fun, if you're single and you want to be in a relationship, is you listen to the podcast as one of your manifestation tools of like, these are all the things I'm going to do when I'm in a relationship, because that's
so good. Fun. That's so good. 100%. Yes, you will totally manifest your partner. And not only that, but you'll be totally prepared to be the best partner ever.
That's the idea.
Yes, everyone go follow Maggie. You will absolutely love her. She's such a bright life and a bright light and a brilliant coach. So thank you for all of your support, Maggie. I love you. Thank you for being my coach, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you. It was an honor to be with all of you, and thank you. I love you too.
Love you. Hey, thanks for listening. I hope this episode is something that you'll be able to add to your manifestation toolbox to come back to when you need a little extra motivation. If you like what you've heard today and want to take it deeper, you've got to come check out my signature coaching program, the Money Manifestation Movement. It's the place where you'll not only learn manifestation, but you'll begin to live it alongside me and an amazing community of like-minded entrepreneurs doing this work together. Head on over to jamieberman.com to learn more.